The Liverpool Way. Liverpool's form as a club has ebbed and flowed like all football clubs that have ever existed. But at the end of the day, there is something truly special about this football organization, something that is near impossible to manufacture, and something that will ensure that no matter how far off the course they may stray, getting back on track is an inevitability. From Egyptian kings to quickly taken corners to miracles in Istanbul to cream-clad Spice Boys, Liverpool has found a way to capture the masses. 6 European Cups, 3 UEFA Cups, 4 UEFA Super Cups, and the joint most successful team in the history of English League football. There has been so much victory and joy in the history of the Merseyside club, so many wins and so many accolades, that at the peak of it all, they were sky high and looking pretty much untouchable. This kind of dominance is rarely universally accepted. As a matter of fact, some even decided to take it upon themselves to dedicate large portions of their lives to knocking them off their perch. Today, I wanted to dive deep into the club. I've recorded dozens of episodes on this team, the past heroes, the disappointments, the euphoria. But in this one, I wanted to start from the very beginning and finish off with 3 men in particular: Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley, and Joe Fagan. Because depending on who you ask, it's thanks to these 3 men that no Liverpool fan will ever walk alone. We all know about the players of the time. Graham Souness and Kenny Dalglish ring bells, of course. But they were only part of a system. Case in point, the famous "This is Anfield" plaque. How did it get there? Well, that was Shankly. Let's look a little deeper. Hello, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Football Iconic. If you haven't subscribed, you've made this puppy extremely upset. But just know that you can change that. Perfect. Let's get stuck in. The origin of Liverpool Football Club did not involve anything red in the slightest. The color of choice was actually blue. As a matter of fact, it didn't start with Liverpool at all. It started with Everton. All the way back in 1878, Everton was formed, and a couple of years following their formation, they moved into a legendary stadium in 1884, a stadium that the Toffees would eventually come to resent over 100 years later: Anfield. I say this because since 1999, Everton have only beaten Liverpool at Anfield once in all competitions. They've played there 27 times in that time period, although that win came in early 2021, which would make you think that times may be changing. This has not been the case, as it's been one-way traffic ever since. In any case, the move to Anfield was orchestrated by the president of Everton, John Holding, who would eventually go on to own Anfield. Holding, a very wealthy businessman and also a man who once served as the Lord Mayor of Liverpool at one point, had his hands in just about everything that was going on at Everton. He was even at the forefront of the club as they became one of the founding members of the First Division back in 1888. However, many believe that a lot of his actions were simultaneously working towards the detriment of the club and the benefit of his pockets. For example, the players were forced to change in subpar changing facilities, and he planned to float the club to purchase more land. One of the final straws came when he decided to increase the rent that the club was paying from £100 to £250. This did not go down very well. The Everton board of directors decided that enough was enough and decided to break away and establish themselves at Goodison Park. That was in 1882. 133 years later, Everton would go on to say goodbye to that stadium too. But back to the time of the unruly divorce, this left Holding with a dilemma: a stadium with no team to play in it. And so, he decided to form a new team, one that would occupy that stadium as their home ground. The name of that team? It's a name you know well. It's a name you've come to love: Everton Athletic. No, I'm kidding. Well, that was his first suggestion, actually. However, it shouldn't be surprising that that name was rejected. Far too derivative. Instead, they adopted the name of the city, Liverpool Football Club, in 1882, the year that the club was formed. Now established as a club, Liverpool were initially rejected from entry into the Football League on account of them only existing for a few days, which is fair enough. Although, after a few years of good performances, they were admitted to the second division, where they went undefeated for 28 games, finishing top of the league. This earned them a playoff match against the bottom team of the first division to gain entry into the top league, a match which they won. Their opponent, Newton Heath. In the modern game, that team goes by Manchester United, a precursor to the rivalry that was to come. Anyway, after a relegation, the club appointed a man by the name of Tom Watson as their head coach. All the historical photos show the man had quite an impressive mustache, so you know he was very important. This guy had just won 3 First Division titles with Sunderland, and Holding had seen enough to make him the highest paid manager in England, earning him a mind-boggling yearly salary of £300. My man was rich. And this investment paid dividends as Liverpool went on to win the First Division with him as manager in 1901. They did get relegated in 1904, but regained promotion immediately and became the very first English club to win the Second Division and then win the First Division in back-to-back seasons. It's quite impressive. The years following this impressive feat were rather uneventful for the Reds. An array of mid-table finishes with one flash-in-the-pan second-place finish in a 9-year period. However, there was a bit of spice. The Great War had begun in 1914, and the Football League was tipped to halt operations indefinitely from the end of the 1914-15 season, which meant that a whole lot of people now did not have a way to pay their bills. And so, a match between Liverpool and now Manchester United, formerly Newton Heath, was fixed to end 2-0 to Man U. After investigations, it was found that a small group consisting of both United and Liverpool players had been involved in this act. With no input from the managers and backroom staff, they had each placed large bets on the results of the match and were intending to secure a large bag from this unscrupulous act. Shameless. Now, there were actually quite a few reasons for why this game was rigged. For starters, United were battling relegation and needed a win to stay up. But as I said, the main reasons seemed to be immediate financials. Liverpool were mid-table, so it wasn't like the game would have affected them, win or lose. But with the war at hand, the careers of several players across the country looked to be just about over. So, at this point, you may be asking, how were they found out? Fred Pagnam, a Liverpool player and probably one of the first snitches in recorded football history, had disapproved of his teammates' shady dealings. This guy threatened to thwart their plan and even hit the crossbar towards the end of the match in an attempt to ruin the scoreline. When his teammates started arguing with him for doing his job, people started to suspect something was up. And to be fair, with the way United are defending nowadays, I'm not sure how match fixing hasn't been brought up. For legal reasons, this is a joke. Anyway, back to Pagnam. This man even testified against his teammates in a hearing with the FA. I'm sure they were less than pleased. There's always that one guy that grosses up and ruins it for everyone, isn't there? Anyway, all the players involved from both sides were given lifelong bans from football, although most bans were lifted in the years that followed. Moving along, over the next roughly 50 years, Liverpool's situation fluctuated a heck of a lot. Back-to-back First Division wins in 1922 and 1923 followed the end of World War I, and years of mid-table mediocrity until 1939 when the Second World War came knocking. A First Division win in the first season upon resumption of the league in 1947 was good stuff, but more mid-table mediocrity directly after that, and a relegation to the Second Division in 1954 was bad stuff. This takes us all the way through to the 1959-60 season of the First Division. After a poor start to the season, Liverpool were far from where they wanted to be. Phil Taylor, the manager at the time, decided to step down in November of 1959 as he felt he had taken Liverpool as far as he was capable of taking them. Promotion to the First Division was proving to be too big of a task. Having said that, an insurmountable task for one man can sometimes be an opportunity for greatness for another. Less than a month later, somebody very, very special arrived. Buckle up, because this is where the story really begins. In the early 1960s, things began to change around Anfield. A team that was pretty much perpetually hot or cold since its existence began to kick into a whole new gear, and all roads towards finding who or what was responsible for this led back to one man, Bill Shankly. Born in the small coal mining village of Glenbuck, Scotland, on September 2, 1913, Bill Shankly was a natural leader and visionary with deep working class roots. He was the youngest of 5 brothers, all of whom became professional footballers, all of whom faced harsh poverty at times, often going hungry. It was harsh times like this that shaped a resilient character of strict discipline. Shankly left school at 14 years old to work in the local colliery, but football remained his passion. Of his exploits as a player, he boasted an FA Cup win with Preston North End and 5 Scotland national team caps. However, a stint in the Royal Air Force when World War II started halted all football. Upon retiring from playing in 1949, Shankly immediately transitioned into management and was set on a collision course with a certain Merseyside club. Interestingly, along the way, he's credited with discovering a young Dennis Law while he was managing at Huddersfield Town. As we know, by 1959, Liverpool were languishing in the second division. Shankly had previously turned them down in 1951 due to being offered what he believed to be a lack of control over team selection. However, this time, Liverpool likely realized that they needed to try something new and offered him the full autonomy he desired. And recognizing the club's immense potential despite its dilapidated state, Bill Shankly accepted the challenge, setting the stage for a legendary transformation. And what a transformation it was. Upon Shankly's introduction, the team was drastically revamped. Shankly was headstrong. He had ideas that he knew were radical for the time, but was still unafraid to stamp his name on them. 24 players were placed on the transfer list when he arrived, with all of them out the door within a year. As a matter of fact, it was more than just the team that was revamped. The former Melwood training ground was revamped. The actual playing surface at Anfield itself was in a state of disarray and needed to be cut, watered, and attended to. Fans had lost a lot of interest in the club over the years as they continuously failed to make it out the second division. There was much to be done. Shankly adopted a detail-orientated approach to managing the Reds that saw him do just about everything he could to give his men just that little edge in battle. By today's standards, Shankly's techniques do not seem out of the ordinary, and there were certainly others that were implementing these ideas into their team preparation, but Shankly was undoubtedly one of the best at putting the theory into practice. His formation was typically the standard 4-4-2, with a heavy emphasis on passing and moving to maintain possession and always having options. He was adamant on training with the ball as much as possible, which was not the norm at the time, where road running and general cardio off the ball were the most prominent training techniques for conditioning. But it was more than that. It was the little things. For example, he championed warming down after intense training sessions and using different studs for different surface conditions. Again, all of these weren't strategies exclusive to Shankly. Many were using them, but he evidently took the details to heart more than most. Fitness, training techniques beyond their time, and genuine innovation was the order of the day. Above that, just so we don't get too caught up in the finer details, Liverpool became a team that the people of the city, and the world for that matter, truly began to resonate with. Under Shankly, Liverpool became something more than just a club, more than a group of people that just kicked a ball about. I honestly lost track of time when doing the research for this one, purely because I was reading up on this man's expansive exploits and why he is regarded so highly by the Anfield faithful. Without having this episode run for hours on end, let me give you a snapshot of what occurred during this man's 15-year stay at the club as the top coach between 1959 and 1974. Then we'll move on to the actual achievements. Liverpool gained promotion to the First Division by winning the Second Division in 1962, 3 years after joining. In 1964, they were First Division champions once more. This victory and the attractive attacking football that was on display caused fans of a once mediocre Liverpool to consistently return to Anfield in their masses. Players like Ronnie Moran and Roger Hunt, who would go on to win the World Cup with England, were at the club before Shankly arrived and swiftly ascended to Anfield immortality. Kevin Keegan would go on to join Liverpool under Shankly and blossomed into the best player in Europe, with back-to-back Ballon d'Ors in 78 and 79 respectively. Along the way, the club transitioned from wearing a red top with white shorts and white socks to wearing the iconic all-red strip. It's hard to imagine them any other way. The famous "This is Anfield" plaque was installed in the players' tunnel, a piece that would instill fear in the hearts of the opposition for years to come and act as a reminder of what was at stake whenever the boys ran out. And finally, this one doesn't have much to do with Shankly's direct implementation, but it speaks to the environment that he created and the message that rang through to the Liverpool community. Throughout the 1960s and a bit before, Liverpool fans were known for singing along to popular hits at Anfield, partly because the stadium had one of the first DJs in English football. "You'll Never Walk Alone," a show tune dating back to 1945, was covered by Liverpool-based band Jerry and the Pacemakers in 1963. As the song hit the UK top 10, it could be heard booming through the Kop for weeks. Unlike other songs that came and went, this one just would not go away. Week in, week out, you knew what was coming, and by 1965, as Liverpool were crowned FA Cup winners, the entire country had already recognized this song as the club's signature anthem as it rang through the Wembley crowd. Shankly understood the importance of the fans in the entire affair, the popular and the very real notion that the Kop end could suck the ball into the net was one that started with him. It's no wonder that the iconic song, with lyrics that preach solidarity and togetherness, became a central club ethos. When addressing the fans, Shankly was the epitome of emotive, and it's not hard to see why. As previously mentioned, growing up in a small working-class town in Scotland, he knew how much football meant to the spectators. Quote, "Liverpool is not only a club, it's an institution, and my aim was to bring the people close to the club and the team and for them to be accepted as part of it. The effect was that wives brought their late husband's ashes to Anfield and scattered them on the pitch after saying a little prayer. I said to them, 'In you come, you're welcome,' and they trotted in by the dozen. One young boy got killed at his work, and a busload of 50 people came to Anfield one Sunday to scatter his ashes at the Kop end. So, people not only support Liverpool when they're alive, they support them when they are dead. This is the true story of Liverpool. This is possibly why Liverpool are so great. There is no hypocrisy about it. It is sheer honesty." End quote. Those were the words of Shankly himself, who, upon his own untimely passing in 1981, had his ashes scattered at the Kop end. Another factor that Liverpool had in their favor was an idea, a notion fostered within the club that, over time, would come to be known as the Liverpool Way. An idea which quite commonly is traced back, you guessed it, to the Shankly era. Depending on who you ask or where you look, you may get contrasting answers on just what exactly the Liverpool Way is. One distinct definition seems quite hard to come by. However, I feel a good summary that I would imagine many would agree with came from sports writer David Goldblatt. Quote, "The Liverpool Way was a tradition of simple football, pass and move, defending and attacking collectively, continuity of staff and players, respecting player autonomy but insisting on solidarity. Possession was the first priority, the virtue of patience extolled." End quote. In short, it was and is a big deal. Shankly's success in his tenure was owed to a plethora of reasons, but one of the great contributing factors to the insane success that Liverpool would go on to have in the years and decades to come was a fabled meeting place simply known as the boot room, a small boot storage room that was converted into a meeting place for the internal coaching staff at Liverpool during the Shankly era. It was here that the very essence of the Liverpool Way was carried out and practiced on a daily basis. The coaching staff would essentially talk shop, strategize, and conjure up ways to best utilize the players at their disposal and crush the opposition. The founding members of this legendary meeting place were Shankly himself, Bob Paisley, Ruben Bennett, Tom Saunders, Joe Fagan, and Ronnie Moran, all prominent figures in Liverpool's history. But there are three names that probably shine brighter than most when placed next to other icons of English and world football history. Between Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley, and Joe Fagan, Liverpool had their managerial mandate for 26 years between 1959 and 1985. Okay, you've waited long enough, let's go over some achievements. First, we have Shankly from 1959 to 1974. 3 First Division wins, 2 FA Cups, and a UEFA Cup. It's not bad. Next up was Bob Paisley from 1974 to 83, a man who the author of Bill Shankly's biography, Stephen Kelly, described as the true tactician of Liverpool, with Shankly being the motivating force. Paisley was another adopted son of Liverpool, once a player for the club with over 250 appearances. When he retired, he joined Liverpool as a physiotherapist. Shankly saw something in him and shortly after joining the club, promoted Paisley to the assistant coach role. He then took on the reins and became the most successful manager in Liverpool history, a fact that remains true to this day. 6 First Division titles, 3 European Cups, 1 UEFA Cup, and 3 League Cups. And finally, Joe Fagan from 83 to 85. The only one of the 3 to actually be born in Liverpool on March 12, 1921, into a, guess what, modest, working-class family. Growing up in the city's industrial North End, football was a central part of his life from a very early age. His playing career, like many in his generation, was disrupted by World War II. Fagan gained recognition mainly due to his calm demeanor and tactical acumen, so by the time he had turned coach and joined Liverpool as a reserve team coach in 1958, he was in the perfect place to do nothing but grow. Shankly would join only a year later, and Fagan stood witness as an assistant coach first to him, then Shankly, before he was up in 83. As a Liverpool coach, Fagan became the first ever manager of an English team to win a treble of major honours in a single season: a European Cup, a League Cup, and a First Division title. That was in his first season in charge. Kenny Dalglish, Graham Souness, Kevin Keegan, Ian Rush, Ray Clements are just some of the names that laced up for Liverpool during this period of incredible success and gained legendary status in the process. I don't know about you guys, but I think that the Liverpool Way was more than just a mantra. Of the names I just mentioned, the Dalglishes, the Sounesses, not only did they become stars at the club, many would later go on to manage the team themselves. The Liverpool Way is a doctrine that, once indoctrinated, becomes a very powerful thing. Only a select few can truly say they have it. Yes, many of the coaches that came later enjoyed varying levels of success, but there is truly something to be said about how inspirational this doctrine has proven itself to be. Over the years, as disaster struck and affected all of those with connections to the city and club, the constituents of the Liverpool Way have remained resolute and supported each other in ways that only they can. But this is not an exclusive club. Let's let that be known. There is a welcoming aura that surrounds the vicinity, an aura that allows Spaniards in Rafa Benitez, Germans in Jurgen Klopp, Portuguese in Diogo Jota, and many, many more to become indoctrinated themselves. Liverpool is a special club. The Shanklys of the world may be given the credit for lighting the fuse, deservedly so, but it is the people and the practices that have allowed the flame to burn bright, past, present, and future. Truly, with this club, it shouldn't surprise you that you will never walk alone.